All right, men, welcome to the ManTalks Show. I'm Connor Beaton, and today we are going to be talking about the 7 skills that every man will benefit from developing and mastering. Now, before we do that, just a quick reminder, hit the subscribe button below or the bell icon to get notified of future videos that I'll drop on how you can be a more self-led, effective man in the world, a better husband, father, business leader in the world, because that's what this channel is all about. Okay, so let's talk about the 7 skills. I thought about this quite a bit and put this list together based on the time that we are living in historically, but the time that we're living in socially, culturally, geopolitically, and based on the work that I've done with thousands of men over the years. And so the first thing that I wanted to start with is developing your capacity to defend yourself both physically and cognitively. Now, most of the time when men talk about how we need to, develop the ability to defend ourselves, what they're generally just talking about is your ability to defend yourself physically. Now, that is incredibly important, and you can learn a tremendous amount about who you are. You can learn a tremendous amount about the world by doing things like martial arts, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, combat training, weapons training, boxing, kung fu, etc. However, what we often miss out on is the really key importance of developing cognitive defense mechanisms, psychological defense mechanisms. However, I think that it's equally as important to learn how to protect yourself against influence through narrative, through story, through media, through misinformation. Now, there's a few things that you can do in order to protect yourself cognitively and intellectually and from the sort of narratives that are out there all battling for your attention. Because the reality is, people want the attention specifically of men because men are the ones who engage in the fighting, right? Men historically have been the ones who wage the wars, who go to battle. And so the more that social media campaigns, news outlets, etc., can gain your attention and can create and turn you into a mouthpiece for their narrative, the more power that they have. Right? There is a war for your attention. There's a war for your consciousness right now. So what do? Well, the first thing that I would recommend is reading a book by a woman named Carol Dweck called Mindset. This is all going to give you a basic understanding of fixed versus growth mindset, how to move into a more growth-oriented mindset and out of a fixed orientation that is likely keeping you stuck, sabotaging you, holding you back, etc. The next thing that I would recommend is a book called Influence, which is by Robert Cialdini, and that is all about the psychology of persuasion. Now, that's a really good book because it's going to give you some insight into how our minds operate, how we can be easily persuaded, how you can begin to understand influence, which is incredibly important. Number 2 is survival skills. I cannot stress this enough. I think that having basic training on how to start a fire, how to create shelter, how to clean your water supply when you are out camping. I think all of these skills, hunting, using bows, being able to hunt with a firearm, all of those skills are very handy. And as the world moves into this space of insecurity and supply chain issues and everything that's going on globally, it's not a bad idea to have these types of survival skills at the ready because it does a few things. One, it builds confidence for you, and you know that you'll be able to protect and provide for your family should things go awry. But they also just instill a sense of reconnecting you as a man with nature, right? If you take the sort of dystopian viewpoint out of the conversation that seems to be very prominent in our modern culture and society, it's bringing you back to an ancient form, right? It's what Terence McKenna called an archaic revival. And the idea within the archaic revival is that we go back into the past and reclaim some of the ideas, some of the behavior, some of the rituals that we used to have because there's merit in those things. And for us as men, being able to go back to the simple foundational pieces of knowing how to survive in the wilderness, knowing how to create fire, knowing how to create shelter, knowing where to find water and how to find water, knowing how to hunt, and to be able to track a little bit. Some of those things are incredibly empowering. And also they put us almost, for some men, it puts them into a spiritual contact with nature, with a different part of reality and existence that maybe they've been disconnected from after living in cities for a very long time. So that's the second piece that I think is incredibly important. The third skill is money and finance. Money and finance. How do you provide for yourself? How do you save? How do you earn more money? What do you do with that money? I think one of the most surprising things for me when I started to earn money was that I had no clue what to do with it. I had been broke and poor and in debt for my entire life. And I started to realize that no one had taught me, not my education system, right? The school system didn't teach me jack about money. My family didn't really teach me about money. And so suddenly when I started to earn decent money and then started to earn really good money, I realized that I had no clue what to do with that money. I didn't know how to save it. I didn't know how to invest it. I didn't know how to plan long term. And that had a detriment when I started to build a family, because even though I was making good money, if my son came to me 5-6 years ago, although I didn't have a son at that time, I wouldn't have known what to tell him. I would have been like, yeah, make money, earn it, save it, and then you spend it, etc. So begin to educate yourself in basic ways. And there are some good resources out there. I think, Tony Robbins has put out, oddly enough, he's put out a good book, I think, that explains basic principles like an ETF fund, index funds, how to actually save your money, how to look out for how the financial institutions take a tremendous amount and which ones you can actually move towards. So there's educating yourself within the fiat currency sphere, right? Being able to educate yourself around the banking systems and some of those basic principles about how to get out of debt, how to stay debt free, how to save money. Skill number 4 is listening and communication skills. So I think that this is an incredibly important skill that oftentimes gets overlooked, for us as men, obviously in certain dynamics, like within relational dynamics, it's very common for people to say like men need to listen more. And while I think that's important, the art and the skill of having people feel and understand that they feel like they are listened to by you is a very underrated skill. Now, I'm just going to break this down a little bit because that might be something different than what you've heard before. So usually we think about listening to people and we just sit there and, we just listen to them and you're like, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. And maybe we give some feedback, about how they can solve their problem with their boss or in their relationship. Maybe we give some advice. But having somebody really feel listened to is for them to know unequivocally that you understand what they're experiencing. And that's a different thing because that's not about solving their problem. It's not about providing the perfect solution. It's not about just simply sitting there and listening. It's really about asking questions, getting curious, and being able to engage that person from the place of, I'm going to really seek to understand what your experience is. If you're having a problem with your boss, I want to get to the depths of why is it a problem? Not only why is it a problem, but how do you feel about that problem? What's the internal block that you might be experiencing? What's the story that you're telling yourself about this issue? And to get a fuller picture so that to the best of my ability and my capacity, I can understand the situation that you are in through your lens, through your experience. Because where most of us go wrong when we're listening to another human being, especially in relationships. This is like this is like downfall 101 of how most of us get it wrong when we're trying to listen to our partner in our relationship, right? Our wife is upset about something that happened with her mother, or one of your kids. And most of the time we are listening through our own context. We're listening through our own filter. And so she'll say something about, well, my mom said this about you or our kids, and I was really pissed off. And you're listening through your own lens of like, well, that wouldn't offend me, so why are you upset? And immediately we've missed the mark. We missed out on the capacity to not only be empathetic, but to have a real kind of logical, pragmatic, and practical understanding of that other human being. I'm going to go through the last three here relatively quickly and give just a little bit of context, but these are equally as important. So the number 5 is regulation. So Viktor Frankl has a great quote where he says, between stimulus and response, there is a pause. And that pause is where we take time to regulate our nervous system, regulate our body, our mind, our thoughts, our emotions, so that we can respond properly. And an unregulated man is not a free man. An unregulated man, a man who is at the whims of his nervous system, a man who is at the whims of his reactivity when his anger comes up, when his frustrations come up, and those are the things that are leading the charge. He is not a free man. He is a man that is a puppet to his emotions, a man who is a puppet to his automatic thoughts, his automatic reactions to a situation. So regulation equals freedom. When you can begin to regulate your nervous system, and you have practices like cold showers and ice baths and breath work and meditation and mindfulness practices, all of these experiences are going to help develop a more robust version of you being able to regulate yourself under stressful situations. Because at the end of the day, your capacity as a man to metabolize stress is incredibly important. Men who can metabolize stress make for better leaders. Men who can metabolize stress make for more sovereign and free men. And that is what we need in the world. That's what I believe. Number 6 is the skill of cultivation, or the skill of stewardship. Now, this is something that I think we've lost a little bit of in the world today. And part of what has been traditionally a masculine task, a male-oriented responsibility, that we are stewards to things that matter culturally, to things that matter within our family, right? The idea of having something handed down through the generations, whether it's a tradition or a home or some land or a spiritual or religious view. All of those things we as men can be stewards to. And that stewardship, which is the job of supervising or taking care of something, right, such as an organization or property, that stewardship comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility and demands that you step into a different layer, a different quality, and a different caliber of maturity. So my invitation for you in this skill is look for what in your life you would like to become a steward of, right? Do you want to become a steward of masculinity? Do you want to become a steward of a certain property within your family that can be handed down generations? Do you want to become a steward of a business or a movement or a cause, right? All of those things can be incredibly powerful. And this brings me to the last aspect, which is leadership. And the last skill that you can develop as a man that is incredibly powerful and potent is leadership. And leadership, by definition, is the process of socially influencing one or more people towards a common goal or task. If leadership is about influence, really it starts with you, right? It's about how you influence yourself towards the goals, towards the outcomes, towards the mission, the purpose, the vision that you have for your life. But then also how you lead, influence, make decisions for the people around you, right? Your relationship, your marriage, your family, your finances, all of those different pieces. So to develop leadership, the skill of leadership, which many people are lacking in the world today, many men have started to adopt this kind of dictatorship, tyrannical version of authority and leadership. And it's just not that, right? True leadership is about the benefit of the whole, right? It's the real king archetype, kind of like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. He is the embodiment of the united king, right? The whole king. And that's what leadership, masculine, male-oriented leadership is meant to be about. It is meant to be about the whole. It's meant to be about continuity. It's not meant to be about division and polarization and hatred and those other types of pieces. That's a very different form of leadership. And that's, in King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, they talk about the shadow archetype of the king. So those are the 7 skills. If you resonate with this, hit the like button below, comment below, let me know which skill you are working on in your life right now, which one stood out to you the most, which one you think is most needed. And ultimately, if you think that I missed a really important skill, I would love to hear that. So comment below and let me know what skill you think I should have added. Until next week, this is Connor Beaton signing off. If you want to learn more about leadership, you can check out this video above. And until next time, see you then.